Yeah, and it's about time anyway, so we'll get started. So I'll share. Actually, I'll start by sharing my screen. But welcome everyone. We're so happy that you could join us. That this was possible to run this online session of the Libraries for Research Data group, otherwise known as LARD. Coined as LARD. Yeah, I mean, though RDA was canceled, we've been able to have many of these online sessions, and thanks to the co-chairs, especially I think Marta, who got this set up. So it's great to welcome all of you, and also welcome in any situation that you're in right now. We understand. We're all there at the moment, I think, with what's happening with the pandemic, and maybe we can talk about that later. There's an item on our agenda for that, but hope you are all doing well. And so anyways, we have an Etherpad that we created for this session, which allows us to really just do collaborative note-taking, to add questions or anything like that you can't verbally do on the call. One of the other things we'll do on this call is if you have a question, you can type in hand in the chat, or type in your question, and Julian Schneider will help with those questions. There's some initial information that Stephanie asked us to include here, which was how to get involved with RDA. It turns out that we're getting a lot of newcomers in RDA since we've gone online. So this is great. This is information from line 6 to 8 of the Etherpad. You can find information about RDA and this group, the Libraries for Research Data, on how to join. So please do if you're not there already. This is our access information if you wanted to share it with other people. I was very happy to see this, that RDA has a code of conduct. I hadn't heard of it referenced before, but really it asks you to be professional. This is a welcoming environment. So be nice. And we have a sign-up sheet in case you haven't seen it already. If you started adding your name, and Birgit and Marta have actually started adding their names, and you can add your institution if you can, and your Twitter handle or email. So I see an email as well, as far as our roll call goes. As far as our roles here, again, I'm the lead of the session. Marta is helping out with the notes, and Julian is helping with facilitation. I think she added a fair joke in there.
Yeah.
We've only got one tag.
Yeah. It's not a meeting at RDA unless there's a fair joke. Yeah, I think we can start with our agenda for this meeting. I think we also have the registration here as well for RDA. So again, to the Libraries for Research Data, but from line 73 to 78. But we also have an announcement, changes in co-chairs, and an introduction to new co-chair. Maybe Marta, you want to do this, or Birgit, or anyone else? Julian?
Birgit, would you like to put it as the person who took the lead on the election process, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, I'd like to thank you all if you contributed to the voting. I mean, it was quite active in terms of the responses we received. I don't have the numbers in front of me at the moment, I must admit, but it was, we had some candidates which were quite close, and we were lucky to have Chris in the end, but it was, yeah, interesting development around our candidates, which were all very good candidates. And yeah, we look forward to work with Chris. I mean, I work with Chris in other contexts as well. And yeah, we are, of course, a bit unhappy that Juliana is leaving, but I hope she will stay around in RDA and help out in other means. And yeah, so.
Right.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, thanks, Julian, for your time, and thanks everyone for voting for me. And I was quite surprised. So it'll be great to join the co-chairs, Marta and Birgit and Andy. So I've been able to work with them before, so I'm excited. And then so update on the engaging researchers with data group and its outputs. So this is Marta, if you want to speak about this, and we can take notes.
Thank you so much, Chris. So indeed, that's just a very short update to tell you that you might remember now more than a year ago, we had started a project which was part of this Libraries for Research Data interest group. And the project was really to focus on trying to identify various use cases for what various institutions all over the world are doing in order to engage with their research communities about research data. So really focusing on the engagement part and thinking about the different strategies that research institutions are using to do so. So initially it was, I think, started at RDA meeting in Botswana, so quite some time ago now, where there were lots of people who were initially interested in that project and happy to contribute those cases. And in the end, we had almost 50 volunteers from a lot of different continents, from countries all over the world who were happy to contribute those case studies. And from all that enthusiasm, we actually managed to not only had lots of input through a survey questionnaire, but also wrote this up into a cookbook, which I will add the link afterwards to the notes, where we have described different cases and which would be most suitable depending on the institutional setting. And people who are involved in that project were very enthusiastic about that approach, but we've also realized while working on this that it went really out of that initial scope of the Libraries for Research Data interest group, just because as initially it was conceived by the libraries. Libraries, I guess, took the lead in many of the research data management activities. But it quickly turned out that there were lots of stakeholders who felt that the scope of the libraries is a bit too narrow for them, because they were either researchers from the faculty or sometimes IT departments, sometimes funding bodies, which really took lots of initiatives to do something to engage with researchers. And therefore, to be able to encompass these broader communities and these broader aspects and to keep that stakeholder engagement going and to embrace on new initiatives proposed by that informal group of people, we actually put a proposal for a new interest group within RDA, and that interest group is called Engaging Researchers with Data Interest Group, which we've drafted a charter. The charter was put forward to a TAB review, and I have to say that the TAB has reviewed that our charter positively. We got some feedback to be addressed. So we are currently waiting for the response from RDA Council, and hopefully within a couple of weeks we'll be able to start working with this new group. So the group is an offspring group of the Libraries for Research Data interest group. So if anybody of you is interested in how to engage a little bit better with researchers and would like to take part in some new initiatives and new projects that the group will want to undertake, please feel free to go to that link and join the group. You, of course, be very welcome, and I still hope that we can very much keep close ties with this group, because I think there will be some overlap between the activities. But I think that's it. If anybody has questions, I'm more than happy to respond, and I can see on that many people from that engaging researchers group are actually present on this call as well, so perhaps somebody else has something else to add as well. Otherwise, I'm happy to hand over to Chris.
I can't see the chat right now if there are any questions. So
They're not.
Okay. Yeah, so the next item is planning for a lesson sprint. And so if some of you may be familiar with this, some may not, but previously we have run in library carpentry worldwide sprints to develop lessons, to develop materials. So previously we've done things like top 10 fair and software, data and fair software things. And, you know, really those were individual interdisciplinary exercises that people, some brief information on what FAIR is at the discipline level and what some of the exercises you can do to understand FAIR at the discipline level. So we did that not too long ago. We also did lesson sprints for things like Git or Open Refine or new lessons like Wikidata. And one of the things that I'd like to introduce, and it's been lingering for a while, is whether it would be interest in a global lesson sprint for a FAIR lesson. Recently I heard from Open Refine that they would be interested in a sort of library carpentry Open Refine lesson. And so I wondered if we could merge those two together because they have some funding for lesson development as well. And Open Refine ends up being, it happens to be the most popular lesson in library carpentry, hands down. Everyone loves it. And so, you know, there are sort of two different options to go here. Is to go the tools-based approach, which is very common in the carpentry. Is actually all the lessons are very tool-centric. So you have Python or R or Git, and the tool sort of drives the lesson development. But as far as how the FAIR lesson has been developing so far, is it's been more about how do I assess, how do I go in and assess like how FAIR data set is or repository, sort of work backwards from, you know, something like a repository, a data set, to understand what FAIR means to you and your community, to your own research. So those are two different approaches. I would very much, it's something we've done before, and we can work. I'm throwing Liz out under the bus here, maybe, but we've worked with, we worked with friends in Australia before, and in Germany, or in Europe in general, as hosts. To really have this broad exposure to be able to do a lesson sprint across different time zones, and to do it across usually it's done across 2 days. So I would be interested to know if anyone is interested in doing that and signing up on line 102. We could take it from there to see if there's interest in developing a FAIR lesson, because I think it's sorely needed. Oh, and I see a familiar name signing up right away. Megan. Hi, Megan. Yeah, please, if you're interested, sign up. And I think if you have any questions, just pause for a second here. I can't see the chat again. Maybe I should stop sharing my screen.
None yet.
No questions. Okay. All right. So, so next up is we have our speakers. So we've asked a number of speakers to join us, and one of the first presenters is Liz Stokes, and so she is on the call right now. I don't know if you want to, Liz, if you want to introduce yourself, and also if you wanted to, if I stopped sharing my screen and you wanted to share your screen so you could have control and present. So Liz, maybe I have to unmute you. I have to try and find you. There you are. Okay. So Liz, you're unmuted.
Okay, can you hear me now though?
Yeah.
I don't, oh, great, okay. Excellent. So my Wi-Fi has dropped out, so I'm joining on the call, but if people would like to open up the presentation that's on the Etherpad.
Oh, I can open it up too. Yeah, I'll open it up as well. Yeah. Sorry,
if you'd like to share that.
Sorry, your internet went down.
Oh,
these are the joys.
It's political, and I'm not going to say anything more. Okay.
Say no more. Say no more.
All right. So, Chris, I'm just going to tell you the slides to go through, and I'll get started. Okay.
Okay. Yeah,
so
I have them up.
Great. Okay, because I can't see anything and I can't see anyone, so you're my lifeline. Okay. So hello everyone. G'day. I'm Liz Stokes. As I begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which I'm standing, and that for me is the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and that's in Sydney, Australia. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners, elders, both past and present, and extend that welcome to any First Nations people we have here with us today. I am going to give a quick and fairly candid overview of current research data support in Australian libraries today. And I just thought I would start off by giving a quick overview of what happens or how we kind of understand data stewardship in Australia, and then take you through 3 different kinds of profiles, which I think illustrate the breadth of data stewardship that is happening currently in Australia. Okay, so if you could go to slide number 2. In a nutshell, thanks Chris, in a nutshell, data stewardship activities are mostly provided by library and repository services through research institutions. These are a range of positions that are involved in engaging and supporting researchers in data management, and it can be, this could be anything from a liaison librarian providing generalist advice and support, through to somebody working in their repository services department who are building infrastructure for more data intensive research. So across Australia, these models for doing it vary greatly. Okay, and because of that, I would like to, I'll go a bit deeper into how these roles differ. Okay, so there's not, to date, there hasn't been a whole lot of data stewardship in the way that it's understood in the way that's understood internationally, I think. Largely these roles are known as data librarians or infrastructure or e-research support. So Chris, if you could go to slide 3. To where these are the kinds of roles that I would like to highlight. So firstly, here on the left in the blue is a librarian working in a typical research support role who is balancing research data management support with the more traditional citation metrics and impact support. Okay. The second kind of profile, which I'll go into, is represented by a data librarian in a publicly funded research organisation, and their work focuses on facilitating cultural change for research data management via internal data skills programs and contributing to projects on research data management service and infrastructure. The third type of data librarian that we find in Australia, I would call a data intensive research project or a service. So this is a data librarian whose focus is much more into the metadata, metadata as both a service and facilitator of data publishing. So this person is involved in improving metadata quality and participates in national and international vocabulary and standards development. So what I'd like to do now is just highlight a few challenges and opportunities that are unique to these kinds of roles. And then I look forward to hearing the presentations from the rest of our presenters today. So if you could move to slide number 4, academic library. So this key role here, the challenges I've identified is, the biggest challenge is really balancing the business as usual versus what is often perceived as new or specialist research data support. And sometimes this can be challenged by a lack of institutional leadership driving any integrated research data management infrastructure. However, for this particular role, recent activities involving piloting versions of programs that we're starting to see emerge internationally, such as a data champions program taking a lead from Cambridge University's program, and also the ARDC's facilitated RISE workshop on the RISE maturity model of research data management services. This is starting to generate some interest and an activity that might smooth out some of those challenges. But the main problem here, and I think this is probably common to everyone here on this call today, is COVID-19 going to throw all of this stuff out the window? Are we going to see libraries retract from their research data management and focus on their basic services? So the next slide, if you can advance, Chris, is the data librarian who's working in a publicly funded research organisation. And this kind of librarian has benefited from, I guess, organisational leadership, which has really championed research data management in a significant way. So they're well underway in a organisation-wide program to develop data skills across their researchers, and we're seeing opportunities emerge such that perhaps more data steward roles and data champion roles are emerging as researchers take on those embedded data custodian roles in their research projects. I'm going to press on because I do know that I can waffle a bit. Onto slide 6, please, Chris, on the data intensive research project or the service. Okay, and this third profile, where we focus on the metadata quality and services, was really interesting when I talked to this data librarian, who considered that their main role is about promoting the FAIR principles for the data that they are publishing. So the challenges here, you can see again, come from an all too familiar reliance on project-based funding, and when you're involved at that coalface, I guess, of metadata management, we get to see when you get to see the application of metadata infrastructure and services, and where it is serving the community and where it needs further enhancement and support. So we can see that opportunities emerging from that are in data documentation and participating in international communities. So just to wrap all of this up now, If you could advance to slide 7, the challenges for data stewardship across these roles, I think, seem to be enabling real professional development that returns rewards for the librarian's own roles and what they contribute to their organisation's infrastructure, and concerns around being spread too thin and needing to choose priorities between the different types of roles. Even though every data librarian that I spoke to greatly appreciated the diversity and interesting challenges that they get within their roles. Quickly, if you could move to slide 8, please, where I outline opportunities for data stewardship. So ultimately, I think I'm very hopeful for these opportunities in advancing reproducibility in research, to reinvent what we understand as librarianship, and being able to do more with less and investigate other opportunities for applying some of the data science and computational skills that we promote to researchers in our own day-to-day activities. So looking forward to hearing what everyone has to say next, okay? And that's the end of my talk. Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Liz. I'm just checking to see if anyone has a question. Julian, no, it doesn't seem like.
There are no questions as of yet. If anyone has one.
But yeah, we can also take questions at the end of all the talks. So thanks, Liz. I mean, that was amazing. I don't think I could have done that. So that was amazing, being able to walk through your slides with the no Wi-Fi and just from your phone. Okay, so a lot of great comments coming in for you, Liz. So next up is, let me share well, actually I can just, Sarah King is next on, and I don't know if you can unmute yourself. I think you are muted when you, okay, hi. Great. All right, hi, Sarah. Hi.
Hello.
Hi. You're here. All right, you made it.
I'm not used to this much adrenaline this early. It's still dark outside here.
You don't need a coffee. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you're ready to share your screen, to share your slides.
Yeah,
so
I'm not really sure. I'll try. I've just been trying to figure it out. I want to be able to see my notes as well. So let me see if I can share this one.
I can possibly share it too. Okay, there we go.
So what can you see there? You can see those slides, and then if I put it on.
Well, you can keep it at this level. I think people can read it, and you can see your notes as well.
And you can just read along with me. Is that okay?
You can read your notes. What did you put in?
Sorry, I really just, I'm not 100% compass this morning, but I will do my best. But anyway, you guys can all keep these notes. I just wanted to make sure that I don't miss some parts. So I am a research analyst at ARNet. For those of you who don't know ARNet, it's the Academic Research Network for Australia. They're happily known as NRENs around the world, if you know about those. And I've been with ARNet for a year working as a kind of translator. And I think what it is about moving away from a communications type approach to sharing the kind of infrastructure we have to a more education and training approach. So we've got a lot of really great infrastructure that's been made, especially I think for that sort of high energy physics type people, genomics, people who have long been using lots and lots of data. But there's a lot of people out there who are moving into the lots and lots of data who haven't really had a lot of experience with this infrastructure. So my job is trying to understand how we can lower the barriers so that more and more people can get on and use the services that we've got. So I have been working on creating train the trainer materials. love a good co-worker. Train the trainer materials for librarians, especially in a way that we may be able to help as many researchers as possible using the librarians as a kind of coalface, because there's one of me and 50,000 researchers. So I'm going to just talk about the way that I've been doing that work and my if you like, to the librarians. And just a bit of background on the services that we have, so you know what that is. We have the high-speed network for universities, education institutions, hospitals, and so on. We connect them with the internet and other things like those big scientific instruments, telescopes, and lots of high-performance type computing and big data storage. We are a non-profit, and we're sort of expanding out into other areas like the GLAM sector. So the libraries are kind of our friends now. And one of the big things that we offer is a cloud service platform called Cloud Store, and that is a specifically designed product for researchers. It's where you can basically do that one-stop shop type thing with all of your files. It's transfer, storage. You can do data analysis with Jupyter notebooks on there and a whole bunch of other stuff. So it's about helping people who are not used to working on cloud hop on and start using cloud. And we also have Zoom, which I guess everyone is now completely familiar with. So what I've been doing is working with the Council of Australian University Librarians. They have been around for a very long time in Australia. It's the peak body for university libraries in Australia. There are 39 of them here, and we also work with 8 members in New Zealand, so we're in a bit of an international group. And what they've done and I'll go to slide 4, is last year they put together a statement or a position statement on something that they produced called a digital dexterity framework. So digital dexterity is, they've used this term coming from I think it's quite a big international research and advisory company called Gartner, and they wrote up about digital dexterity, defining it as, and the quote is there, the cognitive ability and social practice needed to leverage and employ various types of media, information, and technology for advantage in unique and highly innovative ways that optimize personal and business value. That's a lot. But they've picked up on that concept of digital dexterity and want to expand that out to staff in university libraries, and then as a flow-on effect, obviously, then academic students and other professional staff in universities. So you've got a little image there of some of the pieces of the puzzle of the digital dexterity framework, the way that Cole has put it together. And you can see there, it's sort of expanding on an older library kind of chestnut, which is that of digital literacy. That's been around for a long time. So it's picking up on that, but making it much bigger, and how all of those different skills and attributes go together. And that's sort of where I come in, because I'm about a little bit the skills, but it is a lot about attributes and a lot about that kind of changing people's minds, I suppose. So what Cole did last year as part of launching this framework is they launched a digital dexterity champions network. So every university in Australia nominated a librarian as a digital champion, and in New Zealand as well. And what we do is we get together, we have meetings, we've had a bunch of projects and different things to do over the last year. So everyone gets a little email signature. I've just copied that there, and we've got a hashtag. And over the year, we've been doing various activities together to figure out how do we develop digital literacy and digital dexterity in university libraries. I've got the short headings, and they go on to a lot more information if you're interested, and the link is there about what the champions do, and there's a whole bunch of verbs there if you like. So that it's that advocate, collaborate, connect, engage, and you'll see in there that it's not actually a lot about skills. So it's more about changing the culture of the libraries and of the researchers, and everyone to be a little bit more comfortable with the kind of swift change that is always occurring with technology. So where do we come in? we've been providing a group storage allocation for digital resources. So we're creating a central point for all of the university libraries in Australia to share information and share material that people are creating and finding to develop digital literacy. And I've been going around the country doing face-to-face training in using CloudStore, doing a workshop that I call Network Know-How and Data Handling, which is a very introductory level, 3 hours, talking about the difference between bandwidth and God knows what else, you know, just picking up on those terms. We use a carpentry style. I kind of call it carpentry with a K because I have the carpentry's stamp. I've got the badge of approval, but the material doesn't yet. But I'm doing it in the same format and learning how to put that all in GitHub. And I've got a lesson in the incubator, so we're getting there. So I've gone around the country doing the intro to Jupyter notebooks as well. We've done 9 workshops so far. I've got another 5 coming in the next month, although that is going to be necessarily online, which is a new challenge. And we did have a full day meeting in February as a kind of precursor to a big libraries and technology conference in Australia. And I managed to do a Jupyter notebooks workshop for 80+ participants. That was interesting, lots of fun, and we didn't break anything. And we will be supporting it again into 2020. So we're in the meetings now about, well, what do we keep going? Is this working? And there's a lot of enthusiasm, and particularly now that we're all working from home and we've got this whole new COVID-19 situation, I think that everyone's seeing the value in what we're doing and how we're going to move forward. And one of the crazy ideas I've got, which has not got anywhere yet, it's nothing but an idea, but I just thought it'd be interesting to find out if anyone's got any opinions on this. But what I was thinking would be great is to have put together a kind of book that all of the librarians can contribute to, using something like Gitbook, and using it as a way of upping the skills of everyone by using something like that, and doing a sprint so that we can put together a publication that is managed in the way that carpentry's lessons are managed, where you raise issues and everyone owns, it's sort of collectively owned. It's probably a little too big to handle, but I kind of got excited about it. And we would use about 6 months as a way of just doing inclusions and suggestions and putting together ideas for something that would be called the modern, not quite technical computer skills book. Because there seems to be a huge amount of need for people to get the very basics in a way that is not sponsored by a company, that is pretty well tested and tried by lots of different communities, and written by people who have both those very technical skills and the people who can help translate them for people who don't have them at all. So that's my little dream now. I am yet to officially propose it to anyone, but that's the kind of thing I think I could do with 50 librarians if they gave me half a chance. That's me. Thanks.
So thanks. I've got a lot of questions, but there's one from Marta that says, oh, this is Julian. I'm sorry. This is your. Wait, are you muted though? Here, you're unmuted, or you should be.
Now I am.
Yeah.
Yes, Marta asked whether it would be worth collaborating with the Turing Way.
I don't know. I don't know what the Turing Way is, so it probably is if Marta's saying it is.
I don't know either.
I think it might be worth looking into that. They also wrote a book collaboratively. It's basically constantly editing for various people. Whoever wants to join can join. And it's about reproducible working practices. So something very similar about computational skills, about digital skills, and that's co-authored by anybody, by researchers interested in computational reproducibility, with librarians, with people in data management, by data stewards. So I'm just thinking that maybe that's useful to join forces, because I know that they constantly work on that book and they look for more contributors. So I'm happy to put you in touch with some people if that's of interest. So maybe if you could have a look if that's something that you perhaps would be interested in, and if so, I'm happy to make an introduction.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it would be fantastic. That's wonderful. Thank you very much.
All right, Megan says Jupyter for EDU is written collaboratively over GitHub as well. Sounds very similar. So it's possibly a similar scope.
Excellent. Okay, that's really good. I have seen that, but I didn't realize it was written collaborative. That's fab. I'm writing all this down in my very digitally dexterous way with a pencil. I'm an archivist at heart. I don't know what to say.
I just have a follow-up comment to say that I think this is great because it's always been hard for people to sort of crack into getting familiar with working with the lessons in GitHub, you know, in the carpentries, and it sounds like you are trying to do something like that, and that would be great because I think they still haven't. They're still trying to work out how they onboard maintainers and, you know, how people can contribute, because it's, you know, it's a lot to to learn right away, to how to work with GitHub and how to learn all the different ins and outs. So is that what that's what you're trying to do, is lower that barrier, right?
Yeah, that's right. It's funny because there's so many things that you go, oh yeah, the barrier's really low, but you've just got to get through this little thing first, right? Which might be just GitHub, which is terrifying for most people, right? You just look at the word and go, what are you even talking about? So yeah, I think it's a way of doing something collectively. So you've got support. If we can, you know, the vibe is really good amongst all of the different champions, and they seem to have created their own little hubs and everything as well. So I think if you were working towards a collective good, that might, I'm just trying to understand the way librarians work, and I think that might be a good motivator, the collective good. You know, if we can create a free open source go to not quite technical skills book, there might be some motivation in there to keep going and to keep that up to date, because we all share those similar frustrations trying to help people out all the time.
Well, I'd be
Great.
interested if we can have a sign-up sheet or something.
Oh, that's
on the
fantastic.
Etherpad, yeah.
I'm just going to get over the nerves of actually proposing it officially to someone, because I still feel like it might be a completely mad idea.
I think we should, though, move on as timekeeper. We've got 15 minutes left.
Excuse me.
So, yeah. But this was great. As a library carpentry person, this is awesome.
Yeah, so Crystal, I was trying to find my mute button, but Crystal, trying to find you in the gallery. Have you unmuted yourself?
I have myself, and Jean should also be here.
Yep.
Okay, and you can share. You can use the share button.
Yeah, we're going to
share your
the
slides.
screen. So is that possible, Jean?
Yep.
That's great. Fantastic. Okay, ready when you are, Jean.
So before we begin, I would just like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands that I live and work on, the Bunurong people and the Kulin people of the Bunurong and the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. And I would also like to acknowledge the traditional custodians and Indigenous peoples across the globe, wherever you happen to be located and participating in this session from. I'd also like to acknowledge Indigenous and First Nations data librarians and colleagues, and the amazing work that they contribute and bring to the data librarian space and beyond. So I'm here with my colleague Crystal. My name's Jean, and we're going to talk to you about the work that we're doing in data stewardship at the University of Melbourne. So the data stewardship program at the University of Melbourne grew out of the digital preservation strategy. Scholarly Services, which is the business unit at the University of Melbourne that incorporates the library, the archives, and learning environments, developed a 10-year digital preservation strategy in 2014-2015. This strategy identified that research data and research records was one of the priorities for preservation. One of the principles of the strategy is culture change, and the data stewardship program was piloted a couple of years ago in the spirit of culture change. The pilot demonstrated that the data stewardship program was something that was needed in order to preserve the valuable research data assets of the university. At the same time as the data stewardship program pilot was being run, a new 5-year plan to accelerate the university's capacity for data-intensive research was being set up at the university, which was called the Petascale Campus Initiative. The Petascale Campus Initiative, or PCI, involved a broad range of different strategies and programs. The results of the digital stewardship pilot program were used to make the case that scholarly services should partner with PCI so that the data-driven research that was being supported and conducted by PCI as a researcher-led initiative would be properly curated and preserved. In particular, the scholarly service goals of a data stewardship program for curating the valuable research data assets of the university for long-term preservation aligned well with PCI's vision of business services to support the management, curation, and publication of research data, as well as a skilled workforce for research data specialists, which is known as the Melbourne Data Analytics Platform, or MDAP. And I'm going to hand over now to my colleague, Crystal, who's going to share a little more about MDAP, given that she's part of this workforce.
Great, thanks, Jean. Yes, so as Jean mentioned, my name is Crystal and I'm a research data steward with the Melbourne Data Analytics Platform, or MDAP for short. So MDAP is a team of researchers that work to enable world-class data-intensive research across the disciplines at the University of Melbourne. The people of MDAP have a unique blend of experiences. So we have a specialised knowledge in a variety of academic domains, ranging from astrophysics to medicine to archaeology to music. We each bring an organisational skill set that is unique to our research and our work experience. For example, I have experience managing research projects in the humanities and social sciences, but I've also worked in institutional repositories doing data management. And finally, we each have a knowledge of computational disciplines that complement our roles within the team. And each MDAP team member sits at the intersection of this triangle. Sorry, just trying to progress to the next slide.
I think we're still seeing Jean's screen.
Yeah, that's okay. Crystal should be able to move on.
Cool. Okay. So research data stewards in MDAP are employed as academic specialists, and this affords us the flexibility to collaborate as research partners, working with researchers on research data throughout the duration of the research project. So we're expected to bring to our collaborations both our domain-specific knowledge and our specialist skills in data stewardship. Broadly, the mandate of our team covers 4 main components. So we collaborate on research projects, we advocate for best practice in data-intensive research, we consult with researchers on an ad hoc basis regarding data analysis and stewardship, and we draw on and act to enrich our research communities. Excellent. So MDAP research data stewards have a close relationship with student and scholarly services. Student and scholarly services are housed within the library, and they have led discussions promoting the need to value and improve research data capabilities and stewardship within the university. By working in collaboration with such central services, we aim to lay the foundation for building bridges between the library and the research community, and promote buy-in from the research community into university-wide policy and governance. So this partnership strengthens our research community at the University of Melbourne. I'm now going to hand back to Jean, and he's going to speak about the overall vision for this partnership.
So the Engaging Researchers with Data Management Cookbook, which was one of the outputs of this RDA interest group in collaboration with the Engaging Researchers with Data interest group, which Marta spoke about earlier, identified two different approaches to engaging researchers with research data management. The top-down approach, where data management is mandated through policy and senior leadership, and the bottom-up approach, where research data management is led by the needs of the researchers on the ground. The PCI combine both a top-down and a bottom-up approach to transforming the University of Melbourne's capacities to engage in data-driven research, with the MDAP workforce, of which the data stewards are a part, forming the core connection to the research community and the heart of this bottom-up component of the PCI strategy. The partnership between scholarly services and MDAP through the data stewardship program is incredibly valuable, because the library has traditionally taken a more top-down approach, disseminating policy and guidelines and best practice. The bottom-up approach of embedding with research projects and advocating for the needs of on-the-ground researchers enables this culture change that's needed for research data to be successfully preserved. The culture change is needed in the library context as much as in the research context. These are our contact details, and we're really interested to hear what you're working on and whether the approach that we're taking is similar or different to the approach that you're working with. So please do get in touch, or if you've got any questions now, we're happy to have a bit of a discussion. So thank you very much.
Actually, sorry.
You go, Julian.
We are really going to run past time, so I'm going to leave all the questions to the end. We have 2 more presentations, and we only have 7 minutes. So let's go quickly to the next 2 presentations, and then if we have time, we can have questions at the end. So next person, which is Carmi.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Ah, great. Fantastic. All right. I'm just going to put my video back off, and I'll try and share my screen. Okay. Chris, can you tell me if you can see that okay?
Yeah, I can see it.
Fantastic.
We're good to go.
All right. Thank you very much for the invitation to speak and for joining us today. My name is Kami Cronje. I work as a data librarian at CSIRO, and my talk is about the Data School program and how it has evolved over the last 2 years. Before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of country throughout Australia and pay my respect to their elders past, present and emerging. CSIRO is Australia's national science research agency. So to give you a bit of context, we have about 5,500 staff organised into 27 business units. And 8 of those are in impact science, for example, astronomy and space science, health and biosecurity, energy, and so on. Our staff are geographically dispersed across 58 sites, which makes delivering training quite challenging. The idea of a data school began with Dr. Jen Taylor. Jen is a research leader in the Agriculture and Food Business Unit. And back in 2016, she was trying to solve the conundrum of whether to upskill staff in digital skills or to bring in external expertise. And they found that when they sent staff off to short courses, it didn't achieve the changes in practices that they were looking for. So they decided that the solution to embracing digital transformation was to really immerse staff in a training program. So with the support of management and staff, the first data school was piloted at the beginning of 2018. It was an immersive project-based program. It ran for 5 months and was essentially full-time and face-to-face. It was open to any full-time staff working with data in agriculture and food. On the right, you can see the curriculum, which is quite intensive. It includes both R and Python programming languages, machine learning and data management. So the FAIR data principles are a key foundation of the curriculum. Data School Original ran 3 times over 18 months. A total of 24 people were trained across 2 business units. Here are a few quotes from alumni. And Eva on the left is now working in a newly created role called Program Data Support, and she advises a number of research project teams on data management. But please do have a look at the link for all of their stories. By the end of 2018, Digital Academy Learning was formed. It was tasked with scaling the data school to all of CSIRO. This involved putting together a steering committee, a project team, which I'm partly allocated to, and a reference group of business unit leaders. But for the interest of time, I'll skip to the results. Digital Academy Learning worked with the developers of the original program to co-create Data School Focus. Focus is a part-time 10-week program. The first week is face-to-face and the rest is taught remotely. The curriculum is centered around R programming language, and participants learn how to use R to clean, analyze and visualize their project data in a reproducible way. They also learn good data management practices like version control, tidy data and the FAIR data principles. So far 2 focus programs have been completed. A total of 34 people across 11 business units have been trained. And what jumps out from these quotes from alumni are the reproducible techniques they're putting into practice, whether it be in science or in the case on the right in finance. We were also asked to design a short workshop for leaders. The goal was to help leaders understand what's possible in terms of building digital capability in their teams. Again, with the help of researchers, Data School Ignition was created. It's a 1-day face-to-face workshop and a safe space for leaders to self-assess their team's current digital practices, learn about foundational skills taught in the data schools, and map data flows in their projects and identify pain points. By the end of the workshop, they develop an action plan to take back to their team. Data School Ignition has reached over 100 leaders across 20 business units. The overall feedback we've received shows that leaders aren't always aware of the help and training that's available, that they do want to support their teams and improve their practices, and they're particularly interested in the holistic approach of data management. So that was a quick history of the Data School programs. Here you can see all of the offerings through Digital Academy Learning. They include online learning, so we have DataCamp licenses and a subscription to O'Reilly Online. The data clinics are 1-hour recorded webinars in data-related topics like privacy and ethics, but really central to all of this are the people. The Data School community of practice are really passionate about helping each other learn. Thank you.
So you have a question that we're going to copy into Etherpad, but we have to move on to last presentation from Fenella and Andrew, if you're on. Sorry, we're at the end, but hopefully people can keep on for a bit. Fenella?
Here's my share screen. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, here it is. Oh, brilliant. Okay. Share. And I get to start it. There we go, down here. Okay, good morning Australia and New Zealand, and good afternoon, evening America and Europe. Sorry, I've been working since 6 o'clock this morning, so I'm not quite sure where I'm at. In the interest of time, I'm going to sort of scoot through and just give the overview, and just so that you know that Andrew is the technical brains behind all of this. I just have bright ideas. So cultural heritage is, we thought we'd start by putting the goal up front, which is we really want to see what, and this, I've heard this coming through, what's that baseline level of sharing that we could establish through some sort of mutual agreement so that we can be more data interoperable. And one of the things we feel about cultural heritage, as many of you know working in that area, is that there's so many different types of data that we bring together in terms of understanding our collections. I'm a scientist by background, and so I was really interested in how can I make humanities colleagues of mine more interested in the science behind the collections and how we bring that data together. So that was sort of the impetus behind what we've been trying to do. What we generally do at the Library of Congress, I actually have 2 scientific labs, and we're up to 20 staff now, which is phenomenal. And we essentially start by doing a baseline imaging. We map the spectral response with hyperspectral, multispectral imaging, and then we use complementary analytical techniques to actually dig down into what sort of pigment is this, what's the hidden text underneath, how can we use that physical information about sort of data archaeology to sort of bring the collections more alive, which is where I get passionate about things. And so we sort of I coined this very non-technical term, the Go team, where literally we start and we can take all of our portable instruments to collection areas and work with the curators and researchers to actually pull out some of that information. What I really wanted to do though was make that accessible online for people rather than, you know, people don't want to read a boring report and look at images. So how can we bring that alive? So many of you may already work with, and I'm sure know, the International Image Interoperability Framework, which is being used by a lot of cultural heritage institutions. And we really like the goal of giving unprecedented access to image-based resources and developing those technologies. So since this was already being used for image sharing, we felt, how can we go ahead and start to embed scientific data into getting people excited about collections? So what I'm going to skip through very quickly is just some screen captures, because and my Wi-Fi is a little bit fuzzy, a little bit wobbly. So the first example, which goes very much to the normal way humanists are used to seeing things online, was how can we pull out redacted text? So this was a letter from Alexander Hamilton. We went through all the different types of images that you could find. How could we bring out the redacted text that was underneath and make that available? On the left-hand side with the layers, people can click on and click off those layers to sort of zoom into the data. We make the foreground match the background, pull up the undertext, and bam, you can start to zoom into that and see what was originally written that the Sun had redacted, because, oh, we'll hold that thought for later. The next one I really wanted to look at was how do we then start to pull in that spectral data? And so what Andrew did here was pull in the layers on the left side, so you can see the different viewpoints with different wavebands from the ultraviolet to the visible, through the visible and into the infrared, the pseudo color to look at what the different materials map like across the material. And then, because I'm frankly lazy, I asked them to do a slider where you can just really zoom in and very quickly click through all of those different views of the images. We added in a side-by-side spectral comparison where you can put different views and zoom into that data and think about that and look at it. So it's a very interactive visual way of engaging and accessing a deeper view of library collections. And then to annotate and incorporate the scientific data by adding these annotations on there. When you click on that annotation, it brings up all of the scientific data that's been collected. So this is a microscope image of one of the pigments. Not only do you can click on and zoom into that microscope image, but you can look at the X-ray fluorescence data of what trace metals are in there. You can look at the reflectance spectroscopy that helps us analyze what the pigment is. You can look at the infrared spectrum, which often tells us about the other sort of different materials, the binder, coatings and things like that. And taking that a little bit further, then we didn't want to reinvent the wheel, because one of the big things is, what can we come up with shared ontologies? How can we do this more effectively? So if you hover over some of these components, you can see here we have the small version of, you know, reflectance, what that means. But then if you actually click on that, you now go straight to the IUPAC Gold Book for all the specific chemical terms, so we don't have to reinvent that. At this point, we realized that those images that you've seen are static data sets, and that really wasn't what we wanted to do, because suddenly someone would come back and say, well, you gave us, there's an image of what that pigment is, but you want to see what the trace metals in the paper are, so we can see where that provenance of the paper comes from. So we started going a little bit deeper. The Flute Vault was a new building to house our 200 flutes that we have at the library, and we needed to do environmental monitoring of that space to actually think about what was off-gassing with some of the building materials, which is a whole area we got into. So now you can sort of map the space as well as an object, and then click on to those specific analyses of all the, more than you ever wanted to know about, all of the trace volatile organic compounds that are in all of the horrible things in our houses. But then this could be used for active data to work with maintenance and environment as they were looking at when it was safe to start put collections into this area and which materials they were using. However, that still wasn't quite working. So we just got funding a year ago to look at the physical condition of the National Collection, and there's a link to our public-facing website there, which was actually to take 500 of the same identical volumes, supposedly, from 6 different research libraries across America, and they were allowing us to take a 10mm strip off one page and then capture all of the physical, chemical and optical data to help determine which of those volumes is in the best condition. So helping people understand a better idea of their condition of those collections in terms of how they, which ones should be preserved and how can they make withdrawal or retention decisions. And so as we skip through this, you can see some of the catalogue information about what condition that's in, and now an actual active data base using CouchDB that you can click on and constantly reinterrogate. So for example, you can look at the change in the colour spectrum, and we're hoping to be able to use this as a very simple app to help people understand which books are in better condition and how it relates back to their mechanical strength and acidity. But then also you see the query analysis tool that Andrew put together, which is you can overlay, in this case I've just put pH, the acidity with the tensile strength, and then linked over, you know, from a specific time period of what those different analyses are. So really starting to get into a very effective way of making that data more available. So just to finish up, we really wanted to start to build a really functional, usable database of data that can be reused, that we can constantly reinterrogate. I think, as many of you will know, that so often at the end of a project, and I heard it referred to earlier, the funding goes away, that data wasn't really put in a fair profile and isn't easy to get back to and work with. And so I've heard this already, but you know, what are some of those, can we come to some sort of mutual agreement of what that baseline is for some sort of guidelines and design patterns, that cookbook component? So I'm going to finish up there because I know we've run over, but open up for questions for everyone, and as I said, all technical questions are for Andrew.
Well, we also we have the Etherpad as well if people want to leave their questions, and you can answer them. But we are fully over, 10 minutes over. So I don't know if anyone wants to leave, but you know, you can continue to ask your questions in the Etherpad and for the presenters, and so we can all see it as well. Yeah, I think that's about it as far as the session goes. Thank you all for attending, and we're sorry we went over a little bit, but these were great talks. Thanks to all the speakers that joined us to give presentations and to make it during this time. So thank you all, and again, please contribute to the Etherpad if you have additional questions or comments. And I don't know if Marta or Birgit want to have anything else to say before we conclude.
I was just wondering, because I've seen that there was some interest in Chris's suggested last agenda topic about how to provide research data services in the time of pandemic. And I'm just wondering, I can understand that perhaps some of you were interested in that topic as well. So we might want to consider running a separate webinar or a session, if Chris, of course, would agree with his idea on that particular topic, just to dedicate discussion on that. So if that's of interest, I will drop an email to the list afterwards. But if you are interested, please bear it in mind. And if there is enough people who would be interested in such a session, Chris, what do you reckon? Could we organize something separate just on the topic, perhaps?
Yeah. I mean, I think that would be, it's an interesting topic in itself. So yeah, we can have a separate session.
Okay, perfect. Thanks so much for sharing. Thank you all for participating.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good evening, good day.
Whatever.
Yeah, good whatever.
Have a good next 24 hours. Yeah.
Take care, everyone.
Thanks so much,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, good night.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.